that's real carbonic matter. Like that's real anaerobic fermentation is happening there. Like it's not like what they've created. Like you don't need to push, water through like it's all a little bit, dare I say it, wanky.
Yeah,
like it's just.
Oh, but there's so much.
There's quite a marketing going on there.
It came through experimentation and also clever marketing, which is part of what.
Yeah, and
they're very good at.
What Camillo Mezzaralda developed it, Sasha ran with it, and made it famous.
Yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
And
that's the coffee industry, though, right?
Yeah,
but if it hadn't, a bag and selling it, like that's kind of
absolutely. But then if it hadn't happened, you wouldn't have people like Lucia challenging it, like Louise, running with the ball, like Ada as well. She's done a fair amount, in trying to sort of do stuff differently, and I think that's where the application of yeast becomes really interesting, because then you can manage the population. You can now. Control where the population goes.
And this is what Louise is doing a lot.
Yeah. Like, he's only touching the surface. He's using yeasts, pH, like he's really broken down the process. So he's using, specific pHs, specific temperatures, specific time. He knows that the inputs, the sugar levels that go in, the Brix levels, and therefore, with all of those factors controlled, he can extrapolate X, output. And, that's what he does with this cold soul. Same lot, same coffee, same everything, but he can do one that tastes of like a winey Shiraz flavor profile, one that tastes of pink fruit, one that tastes of like crazy tropical fruit. It's the same coffee, but just they've manipulated what's happened to that lot just by pH, yeast application and a temperature time.
That's massively interesting.
It's massively, but again, that's like the start of it, because if you could then map, if you could map what microbial populations were in the coffee at any one time, and then you could be like, well, what flavour do those microbial populations give off? Oh my gosh!
Well, that's what he's pushing on.
That's
right?
what he's pushing.
Yeah.
But the investment required for that is big, and Brazil is not necessarily geared up for that kind of investment. I think he was saying like $1 million lab.
Australia is so.
Australia is, yeah.
That's interesting, because that's to a certain extent it's the same thing as it is with any of these things. Is we don't really understand the process in its entirety, and we're only just starting to scratch the surface and dig a little deeper.
Yeah,
and we can only really start understanding it if we collect data, and we collect data for a long time.
Yes, exactly.
And understand what that data means.
Exactly.
Which I guess is a nice, neat way of going into roasting, because that's essentially what roasting is.
You test one thing at a time, change one thing at a time, and slowly...
And collect data on it.
But you're pretty rare in that the level of data you collect, is probably more than most roasters do. Like I don't know, and I've said it before. I don't know many roasters that actually ignore the roaster behind them, at the screen.
Not so much ignoring, just looking at the pictures. The roaster's giving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, well, maybe you could expand on that as far as fermentation goes, and you being the head roaster of Dawn Patrol, you could maybe your experience as far as your relation to certain fermentation methods and what that does in the roaster.
There's certain trends I've noticed, particularly with natural coffees. They tend to give out a lot of energy just before and during first crack. They require a lot less energy, but tend not to crash as well. Whereas a lot of wash coffees, if they give out a lot of energy and you try and compensate by applying less gas to make it not run away with itself, not long after you'll have a tendency of the rate of rise crashing.
Yeah.
And the actual roasting process stalling.
Yeah.
And therefore underdevelopment, and probably followed by baking.
Yeah.
Whereas natural coffees, actually, if you understand what's coming, I find it a lot easier to prepare for a natural coffee during first crack, and I find them to some degree, a little bit more stable.
Yeah.
A little bit easier to control.
How do you find that against like an anaerobic fermentation?
I've never roasted an anaerobic fermentation in that regard.
Yeah, okay. I'll help you.
Extended fermentation, yes.
Yeah.
Which is essentially anaerobic because it was, held in a water tank over 7 days, wasn't it?
5 days was
it 5 days?
The Colombian,
Yeah. Again, very stable, really nice to roast.
Yeah.
Held through first crack, didn't crash. We're still trying to collect data on, as much data as we can on all of the coffees we have to try and discover more about why they crash.
I was about to say, do you feel we're gathering enough data?
No,
not in the slightest.
I still feel like it could be linked to water activity, but I'm not sure at all. I could be completely wrong.
No, I think there's something in that.
But I don't know what, and we don't have the tools to measure water activity consistently. Like month by month, like we're testing our the moisture percentage of our coffees monthly.
Yeah.
To see how they're deteriorating in that regard. But the water activity, if it's stable, I assume it should stay the same, but we don't know.
Yeah.
But I have had coffees that we've roasted that crashed a lot, that then ended up not crashing as much as they aged.
Yeah, interesting.
They didn't get amazing, but it definitely changed.
It almost got easier to handle as time went on.
Yeah, we still had to do things to deal with it, but they were actually having more of an impact than they did previously.
Wow, that's cool.
So we've noticed that with a couple of particularly bad coffees. But I still don't know what.
That's one of those things that I think we'll probably never find out. But it's good to chase.
It's something to do.
Yeah, we had that conversation shortly about the roasting process and trying to collect more data. And essentially, it's not really changed in the past 150 years, apart from we put some probes in.
Some really unhelpful places.
Some probes in the machine, and now we read temperatures. But we were having the conversation about being able to read humidity in the roaster, which there is no reason that we can't, because you can actively buy humidity probes. But changing that information, that electronic signal, into data that logs in Cropster is a different story. But I think there's more on that can be done.
We could essentially log that manually by placing a probe on the air intake into the roaster, which would be quite a good reading. Similar to a manometer on the gas to check, especially not so much for us because we're running on bottles, but people are on natural gas. Obviously, the gas pressure changes quite frequently.
Is there also a relationship that like the calorific content of the gas and the heat at which that calorific content burns is different? Does anyone actually look at that when roasting?
I would say no.
No. Yeah.
Not at all.
So you've got a whole bunch of variables that we're not looking at.
Yeah.
So many.
Not only that, but when you mention that, obviously the gas burners are exposed and they need oxygen to burn, right? But I have noticed, and I think we've noticed, that depending on the day, and it seems to be sometimes the burners run more efficiently. So whether there's more oxygen or more chance for it to combust more efficiently, I don't know if the air's thinner or the air's thicker or what changes that.
I look at it,
isn't that interesting?
Weirdly, in a similar way to a turbo. They run better with cool air. And same as those. I think it runs more efficient. I've noticed on particularly cool days, I actually turn the fan speed down by anywhere from 3 to 5% to compensate. And I've noticed that makes a bit of a difference. Looking at the profiles, looking at the environment, temperature, things like that. Because everything's running a bit more efficient. Obviously, there's a better cold air supply coming in as well.
It would be cool to get the same coffee different fermentations and then look at the roast profiles
Yeah.
like right next to each other?
I guess we can. When we
Fioretti.
when we have Luis's coffee,
Luis's, yeah.
because it'd be the same. It's the same variety,
Yeah.
same farm,
Yeah.
and different fermentation methods, and that would actually be a really cool. And maybe we should do that and see
Sell
what
as a
happens
pack,
and come
yeah.
back. Come back with that.
Yeah. We did it with the Charnia and the Orettis.
We did,
Although they were all different varieties,
Yeah.
same place, they all roasted actually very, very similarly.
Yeah.
Very
I was hoping you'd
similarly.
say that roast really differently. Oh.
But yeah, it'd be good to see, I think, 'cause, the processing, it would be there'd be a greater difference, I think, for sure.
Less variables, and all that will be tested is literally the roast profiles and how different they are between fermentation methods.
Ricci's going to be coming your way soon as well.
Well, that'd be amazing.
That's delightful.
Let's do that. That'd be outstanding. But I think we will work a little bit further on trying to get a humidity sensor in the roaster.
Yeah.
And even if it just spits numbers out, numbers is better than nothing.
Yeah.
Well, we just
At
keep
least you
writing
can
them down,
then
and eventually
record
there'll be a
something.
pattern, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And having and having the difference between the air, the ambient air and the air in the roaster, and I think it could be a valid point if we start seeing humidity change in the roaster, on what it could almost be a little window as to what's going to happen into the future.
Yeah.
The way I see it, it might not be. It could be some different answers, but why not try it? Like, it's definitely something that can be tried, and it should be easily done, really.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So maybe we'll do that and see what happens.
Shame we can't do it here and then take our setup to like Northern Territory and
Trying a humidity. That's another thing is, the moisture in the air. I wonder how that affects. Again, it would definitely affect burning of the flames as well. Yeah, so many things that we have no idea.
Yeah, it's not
about.
just ambient temperature, which I mean, a lot of people, including ourselves, is what we tend to just look at as the ambient temperature. But there's so much more.
Yeah, it means so little.
You get very focused on one aspect because I guess you try and control one thing, but you look at the bigger picture, it's quite intimidating.
Yeah.
To see how much is still.
You don't know.
And how flawed everything actually is.
We're out of time.
Yeah.
We're done. We're finished.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Till next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.